Most video games expect you to attack enemies, but how much could you fight against that expectation and avoid beating other creatures senselessly? Well, today I call self-defense, because that's what we're going to attempt in Conker's Bad Fur Day. We'll be covering both the original game and his remake, seeing where we can avoid attacking bosses, normal enemies, or even objects, since the definition of attack counts some things as well. So before adding an attack to the counter, we have to consider the context of what we're doing. And I just gotta add, I seriously underestimated this challenge. With that said, let's get into it. Before this challenge run can truly start, we of course have to unlock a weapon. And with our frying pan in hand comes along our first combat encounter. Fighting these goblins the normal way will lead us to 6 attacks already being used. 3 for each of them. Oh, and just to make sure we're on the same page, 1 swipe equals 1 attack. How the guns are counted we'll talk about when that becomes irrelevant. Anyway, we're not some filthy casual squirrel, we got fucking shorts on, damn it. Peeking an eyeball on the speedrun, we can see they kill 2 of the goblins in 1 full 3-hit combo, lowering the total attacks to at least 6. However, what if we can get all 3 of them in 1 combo? That's the idea I began playing around with. And after a good amount of just taking hits, like, finally find out that by letting them surround me by the wall allows us to get all 3 of them in 1 satisfying motion, putting us at 3 or 4 attacks total. We also have to hit the gargoyle once to trigger the cutscene. Conker whacking him a second time doesn't count for the total. Conker, control yourself, damn it! That finishes Hangover for the remake. The original doesn't have those 3 goblins, meaning you only have to smack the key once, then the gargoyle for our second attack, putting the totals at 5 for Live and Reloaded, and 2 for Bad Fur Day. That is quite a gap to start off on, but I reckon it's about to decrease soon. This time around, Windy only has 1 area of concern for Bad Fur Day, that being these dung beetles, not ladybugs as I've falsely called them my entire life. Thanks to Lloyd for pointing that out to me. However, Live and Reloaded has extra enemies roaming right on the path for our beehive retrieval mission. On our way up, we can easily avoid them by jumping around the edge, but we can't jump while carrying the beehive, which means we have to just hope that there's enough room for us to run around them without getting skewered. First one isn't an issue thanks to all the space here on the right, but the second one barely has a gap for us to maneuver around. Thankfully, it's just enough to squeeze by, letting us catch up to the Bad Fur Day by the skin of our teeth. Or I guess it's teeth, as like the game's, you get what I mean. Here you have to shoot 8 times to kill all of these dung beetles. Even if you manage to get past them all without dying, there's a locked door along with invisible walls, preventing you from progressing any further, ending Windy on 8 for both versions, totaling at 13 for Live and Reloaded and 10 for Bad Fur Day. Well, the gap didn't shrink, but we at least managed to make it remain the same. And yet, I know there are some sections coming up that will definitely threaten to widen it again. Barn Boys is where we get to introduce our usage of glitches, but mainly for Bad Fur Day. I tried to do this warp on the remake to test if I could press down this button and skip the 3 attacks required to feed Marvin a mouse. Sadly, it just wouldn't happen, no matter how close I seemed to get, putting us at 3 attacks for both versions. I promise, we'll see a cool glitch in Bad Fur Day that lets us skip an entire boss phase, while Live and Reloaded has a difficult skip to showcase later on. Much later. Next is our playdate with Frankie, and no, him being an idiot doesn't count as an attack since we aren't the ones initiating it. Keep this in mind as it will be important for another fight section later on. Now is when we can finally showcase a cool glitch that allows us to save 3 attacks. We just gotta toss a few knives first so we can add Frankie to our party, 5 for the N64 and 2 as the minimum for the remake. Then proceed to completely ignore him and jump into the roof here, clipping through it and falling into the loading zone below the barn, saving the 3 attacks in Bad Fur Day that are required in Live and Reloaded. Bad Fur Day still requires 3 button punches to blow up this robo bastard. The same goes for Live and Reloaded, of course. Now it's flood escape time, meaning we have to toss 6 whole knives to avoid being electrocuted. Wish there was a way to avoid damaging these wires, but my child self will tell you it's impossible. Next, Conker defies Mario 64 logic by surviving the longest ground pound ever, and manages to grab all the bees with no acts of violence against the locals, even if they are the ones that are unfriendly. Finishing our Barn Boys with 17 for both Live and Reloaded and Bad Fur Day, totaling at 30 for the remake and 27 for the original. It's surprising that even with the boss skip on Bad Fur Day, the gap didn't even remotely budge, mainly thanks to Frankie's rope being more resilient in the original. I wonder how long this will keep up. Put on your hazmat suits, it's time to submerge ourselves in shitland. We begin our assault with a violent smash through this trapdoor, leading us to jump around all of these goblins before having to dodge this bull. We force said bull into ramming into these cows 6 times, leading to his horrible demise. He drowned in a tank full of shit. Damn. That's rough, man. Now it's time to plant some booby poos. I can't believe I just said that out loud. We blow up this fat dung beetle, collect this money, and open up Great Mighty Poo's lair for later. We're gonna use an annoying strat to avoid attacking in there after finishing Bat's Tower. Speaking of, after unlocking Bat's Tower, our total sits at 36 attacks for both versions. The gap is closed? I didn't expect this, what the fuck? However, before we get ahead of ourselves, Bat's Tower has a cool glitch you can use to avoid attacking these cogs. It's reminiscent of Avatar's firebending and even works on both versions. Well, sort of. You'll see what I mean soon enough. After unlocking this underwater gate causing the cogs to spawn, we can now do the glitch that is similar to the infinite sword glitch in Zelda. By pressing B while on the edge of the trunk here, Conker ends up pulling out his flamethrower right before falling down, giving him even more superpowers by copying firebending from Avatar The Last Airbender, or the other one. Similar to Link with the infinite sword glitch, Conker is now in a state of perpetual attacking, making it possible to knock down the cogs by simply walking into them, putting us at 1 attack in Bad Fur Day. This also works on Live Reloaded as I stated earlier, but not exactly like it does in Bad Fur Day. Disappointing, I know. To make matters worse, there's of course a damn goblin blocking the way to the rest of the cogs. Even if you get past the bastard, there's no way to get back without dropping the cogs in the process, forcing us to kill him with 3 hits, along with the 3 more attacks needed to collect the cogs, putting us at 6 attacks in the remake. Depending on how the areas coming up go, Bad Fur Day could reclaim its lead. However, that won't happen in the vault, I can guarantee that much. I don't count firing the slingshot 4 times to unlock the industrial door here as attacks, since we aren't shooting to damage anything. Remember, our intention is what matters here. So, our next obstacle comes in the form of these demon-looking imps. Conker and I both conclude they have some serious issues, so the natural reaction is to get drunk and piss on a whole army of them. You know, typical Tuesday activities. The way I count this attack is similar to how I will count the guns, by each whole P cycle. Meaning, the whole duration of Conker pissing counts as 1 attack. And if you're efficient enough with your P aim, you can 1-cycle these crazies in both versions. What a sentence, only this game can make you say something so weird and make it make sense. Yet the next boss isn't any different. Each of our attacks consists of pulling a lever to dump shit on our distinguished Gentle Furnace before smacking his brass balls. Do this 4 times on both versions and we get to leave this shithole forever, totaling at 11 in the remake and 6 in the original. Well, I'll probably be back to attempt some other challenge in another video, but that's besides the point. This sets our total for Live Reloaded at 47 and Bad Fur Day at 42. Now it's time to fight the Great Mighty Poo, who starts off by actually helping us feed him these sweet corn. You just gotta be patient since he's blind and, well, doesn't have much of a brain. For the actual boss fight, we just jump like the speedrunners do to dodge his attacks. Then try not to miss a single toilet paper toss to finish with 6 attacks on both versions, leading us into Ooga Booga Land, where we get to commit war crimes and fraud. We begin by rolling a drunk rockman into 2 unsuspecting Ooga Booga men. 2 birds or cavemen, 1 stone. In no other game would that sentence make any sense. Thankfully, we can save our vintage bat from more abuse by letting our pet dinosaur do all the work. But we still have to attack twice to murder the poor bastard. During the assault on the rockmen, it seemed like I didn't have to attack them at all since the Ooga Booga men were going fucking wild. However, they don't do any actual damage until we attack. I don't know if we just have to soften them up or something, but this just makes it so we have to hit each rockman once, totaling for 4 hits. You just gotta be really careful to attack the same one they're attacking, otherwise you'll have to hit them again later. This allows us to yet again give 2 rockin' rocks a golden shower. Then we commit a war crime by blowing up and flooding an entire civilization. Good job, Conker, I take no responsibility for this. It's all you. Kid me called this the hardest part of the game, but now, it's so easy I first try it, idiot. You have to attack 3 times to get through though. Now it's Dino Coliseum time, and here we apply the same principles we did with Frankie. I first thought we would have to somehow group them all together to kill all of them with just 1 headbutt. But thankfully, the dino actually has some level of autonomy and auto-eats whatever it's in front of him, allowing us to finish the first wave with 0 attacks. This also works for the ranged bastard, but just barely. For the spear tossers, you need a dino to grab one of them, then run to the other side of the arena and wait till he eats them. We just keep doing this over and over until it's finally boss time. Here, we unfortunately have to initiate the attacks. But man, I totally ate his ass. That sounded better in my head. I had an easy time for once, that's all I'm saying. After 6 attacks, he goes down, totaling at 17 attacks for both versions, putting us at now 70 for Live and Reloaded's total, and 65 for Bad Fur Days. Thanks to the dinosaur actually having some free will, we get through with a lower total and less deaths on Conker's hands. Good boy. Next, we have to finally confront how we count guns in this game, and I'm not sure how your reaction to this will go, but let's get to it. Upon our return to Windy, this bitch loses her beehive again, forcing us to retrieve it once more for a fat paycheck. The first obstacle here are these gremlins in the remake, and at least for now, we can just jump around them to gain access to the beehive. Hopefully that won't cause trouble for us later. This puts us in an awkward shooting segment where the only way that I could count attacks without it being a major pain in the ass is by counting the amount of magazines we use. So the moment I shoot and use the first bullet is 1 attack, and the next one begins after the reload sound is played and the next shot is fired. I am also not aiming to be perfect where every shot counts, just what is expected to be good enough for a decent player. This is a solution that I found seems the most reasonable, and I'm doing multiple attempts here to see how low I can get it. With the explanations out of the way, in Live Reloaded I got through 4 rounds before finishing, and in Bad Fur Day I just barely did 6, so I think it's definitely doable with 5. However, while doing research, I was skimming through speedruns and saw that in one of our speedruns, they somehow managed to do it with 2 mags? That or I counted wrong, not really sure. So if anyone has an explanation for this or a better understanding on how these work, I would love to hear it down below. Since even after looking at every corner I could think of, I don't exactly know how these turrets work. Anyway, we're sticking with the numbers I got for the sake of consistency. Now is the moment of truth to see if I can skip these goblins. I first tried to just run around them, which does work for the first one, but I get caught on the second one's spike. However, this triggers a bug or some oversight that is also utilized in the speedrun, where upon respawning, Conker is still carrying the beehive by the entrance. This saves us some trouble, though if you're still wondering if you can pass through all the goblins, you can. Finishing this beehive mission, which leads us to our next hurdle in the shape of a barrel. To unlock the next level, we have to roll down this sentient barrel in order to break open this tunnel. But the problem is the flesh-eating worms that block the path down. Now, we could just use the excuse of it not being our intention to hurt them. However, I would argue that it is part of what Conker wishes to do. So let's just see if there's a way to avoid them. These rocky overhangs actually makes this really easy in Live and Reloaded, on the contrary for Bad Fur Day where it gets more complicated. The path is way more narrow here and forces us to be more creative with our pathing. First, we begin by hugging the windmill. Then, when we pass the second worm, we slide down on the side here where the barrel reveals its spider powers and clings to the side of the mountain, allowing us to pass the rest of the worms without a single death, totaling at 74 for Live and Reloaded and 71 for Bad Fur Day. Now, this was surprisingly easy, but the same can't be said for the barrel segment in Spooky. Speaking of, oh boy, this level is a pain in my ass. Already, we have to kill at least 12 zombies to get up to the mansion. Yeah, I counted as well, and he is speaking facts. But that is only the prelude to the bad section. As you probably know, you have to shit on villagers in order to pick them up and toss them into a meat grinder. On both versions, you only need 7 villagers to progress. But good luck only using 1 poo per villager. I swear, in Bad Fur Day I had to develop a new way of engaging the villagers since their aim is surprisingly good. The easiest method is getting close and shit right before the villager throws a spear to make sure it lands. However, this causes you to take a hit more often than not, and there are multiple villagers tossing spears at you, so you can't do this every time. That's why I started to try and either tail them to poo before they throw a spear, or right after, which took some practice to get consistent at, but with some help from a chocolate reserve, I got through. In Live and Reloaded, you have the rectal cam, which makes this way easier. I just had to get used to the controls and then wait for them to toss their spear, dodge, shit, pick up, drop, repeat. I wish I could say the worst thing is over, but sadly, or happily, depending on how you look at it, there is another difficult part coming up. Anyhow, doing this jump trick lets you skip having to get the other 2 keys, like the glitch in Bad Fur Day I showcased during my jumping challenge. In Live Reloaded, this doesn't impact the amount of attacks you have to use, since you can just run past all the bats and zombies unlike in Bad Fur Day. However, I made no rule against glitches, so both versions can get past the key part with 0 attacks. Now it's time for Mr. Barrel Part 2, and this one is a doozy. Live Reloaded had it easy last time, but now the kid gloves are off. With this much shit on the pathing, there's no way to avoid all of them and still get down. Well, almost. There are 2 ways to look at this. Either you have to avoid all the enemies, the glass dolls, zombies, and skeleworms, or you can use the technicality of them walking into you not counting as an attack, since our intention isn't to kill them. And I'll say this now, both viewpoints work. It comes down to how difficult you want to make it. By following this very precise route I made as a proof of concept, you can avoid all the enemies here without running them over. Despite that, I never managed to do it all in one go. Though that is simply because of the time constraints and not because it isn't doable. The route is just super precise with enemy timing and movement, which gets a little funky if you move the wrong way. The lamppost can also be used to break without combusting somehow. Bad Fur Day gets a much more relaxing time here, since there's no glass doll zombies. So I did manage to do this all in one go, and it felt quite good. With this, we finished Spooky, putting our totals at 93 for Live Reloaded and 90 for Bad Fur Day. Unfortunately, there's still the biggest combat section left, and I have a feeling it will be intensely annoying to get through. We begin the war arc by blowing up the immortal gremlin twice before getting our gun, which we count the attacks of exactly like the turrets. Here we have a huge shootout in Live Reloaded we can thankfully skip by shooting a very precise location on the lock and killing at least a single Teddy in one round. Once inside, we get our first non-skippable shootout before tackling the first hallway. In the shootout at the end, it's a little more difficult. At first, I thought we had to go through the entire corridor and kill each and every Teddy, but then I wondered what would happen if you just ran straight through. So that's what I tried, and sadly, it didn't trigger the cutscene. However, by simply unloading a magazine on the Teddies that were there, it cut the amount of magazines needed from 5 to 3. In Bad Fur Day, we used 1 less during the first shootout. We employ the same strategy in the next corridor as well, and here I think we can avoid shooting at all, since the hallway ends with an open gateway. So I start brute forcing through the Teddies and flamethrower dudes, just smashing my head into the wall over and over again until we finally get through. Exactly like a plan. And I'm not even being sarcastic this time. In Bad Fur Day, you have to have some extra good RNG so the Teddies behind you get stuck and don't start chasing you down the hallway. So far, so good. However, I am not looking forward to a certain tower section that's coming up. Not because of the tower necessarily, but something surrounding it. You'll see soon enough. Next, we have to shoot the nurse Teddies, which don't pose much of a problem. In Live Reloaded, there's a special cutscene to showcase the mini-boss coming, which resets your ammo, which is why I've divided the combat section into 2 phases. First one I used 3, and for the mini-boss I went through 2. In Bad Fur Day, there's no cutscene, putting us on 4 attacks there. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part, rescuing Rodent. In Live Reloaded, the Teddies have more HP, causing us to have to use 1 more mag than in Bad Fur Day. Despite that, we thankfully don't have to kill any Teddies to open this giant door in both versions. Though Bad Fur Day needs some extra help with the death warp to make it work. We blow up the tiny door here before tackling the tower I mentioned earlier, where we have to shoot off the support beams to enter the hole under it. Unfortunately for us, there are Teddies running around and throwing grenades, which we have to avoid. Bad Fur Day has an easier time here thanks to the speedrunning strat letting us skip the final bridge. However, Live Reloaded isn't so lucky. Here, there is no fancy pinch trick we can use to skip the final bridge, and it took me a good amount of tries before I got through the entire road without either dying or mushing a Teddy. And yet, even when I get here, there are several more Teddies all clumped together tossing grenades like it's New Year's Eve. Thankfully, I eventually got it down and revived at the submarine section. Oh my lord, this section is even worse. Why, you might ask? Because the entire thing is based on RNG. There are 3 areas in this basement where you have to shoot these submarines, and the first one is fine, no problem. 3 down, good to go. Then the second round, they introduce a second submarine. That's fine in its own right. The problem comes when I realize that they can be blown up at the same time if they're close enough, but this requires essentially perfect luck and is frankly way too annoying to deal with. You have to try and get them to sync up so they dive down and come up at the same time, while also just hoping that they spawn next to each other. Yeah, good luck, I say. I can't find a single consistent way of making this happen. It sort of just does, and if the RNG is on your side, this can continue to happen. Or not, it feels entirely random. I've tried just waiting for them to spawn next to each other, it didn't work. Even the amount of submarines don't seem consistent during the second round. I've counted 5 subs once, and in other times, it's 6. What's the deal with that? Can't it be consistent so I can have something to orient myself with? Maybe I'm doing it wrong, I don't know. Either way, because of how much time I've spent on this, and I don't see a consistent way of recreating this, I'm making a range of total attacks depending on RNG, simply to cover my bases. Meaning, we have to spend 10 to 16 attacks in both versions. I know this is not the most satisfying result, but I've tried my best and this is what it's come to. Next, we have to fight the Exorcist conjoined twin, and finish the bastard with 12 attacks in both versions. Now for the escape sequence, where we rush through like earlier and only fight the required teddies blocking our path. In Live Reloaded, we landed on 2 shots for this section, while Bad Fur Day used 4 since there seems to be more enemies here. When we get outside, we can thankfully just bucket to the shore to escape. And that finishes this section with 50 to 56 attacks in Live Reloaded and Bad Fur Day, putting our totals at 143 to 149 for Live Reloaded, and 140 to 146 in Bad Fur Day. Wow, that was a fat bump in attacks, and now we even have a range to include. But thankfully, the final arc will be just a blaze of pure fun, full of difficult but fun shooting, and finally getting to kick that alien's ass. We are now in the fucking Matrix. Here, I count each individual shot as one attack, making for a challenging but exhilarating final shootout. In the N64 version, however, aiming is totally different, making it quite a bit harder to actually land your shots. And with the 24th and final guard down, it's time for the most infuriating and bullshit boss in the game. Money. Okay, not really, but in Live Reloaded, we can save 1 attack here by hitting 2 monies at the same time. You can't get 3 in 1 since they get up again way too quickly. In Bad Fur Day, it's straight up impossible to get more than 1 because of how long the animations are here. The actual boss I was talking about is the fucking alien. First phase? Easy. Second phase? No problem. Now, why was I calling this fight bullshit again? Well, because of its final phase, where inputs end up not registering properly, not allowing you to finish the required combo to beat the boss. Despite that, I somehow managed to do it on my first try in Bad Fur Day, and you have no idea how good that felt. Live Reloaded, however, I had less than optimal luck. But I have proof it's doable, and that is enough to conclude that the final total for both versions of Conker's Bad Fur Day is beatable in 184 to 190 for Live Reloaded, and 182 to 188 for Bad Fur Day. I did not expect this challenge to be this troublesome, and the amount one can do to limit Conker's violent habits is really restrictive. You pretty much always have to do some amount of whacking, except for a few instances. But the strategies I had to employ to restrict the amount of attacks were quite interesting, both the glitches and basic tactics. With that, thanks for watching. It truly means a lot that you've made it this far in the video, and if you want more, hit the thingies. You know what I mean. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and see you in the next one, hopefully.